I'd like to call to order the City of Saugatuck City Council Workshop for November 19th, 2025. Jamie, will you call the roll?
Anderson,
Here.
Clark,
Here.
Dean,
Here.
Gardner,
Here.
Muncy,
Here.
Peterson, here, Stanton. Here.
We have a quorum. Any changes to the agenda? All right. Public comment on agenda items only. Anyone in the room wish to make a comment? Anyone online wish to make a comment? All right. That takes us to our action items. We have 2 points of business. First, the regular city council meetings, minutes from October 27th. Would someone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular city council meeting minutes from October 27th.
Second?
Second.
All right, it's a roll call vote. Oh, a discussion. Any corrections, questions? All right, roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes?
Clark,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Stanton. Yes.
Motion carries. And then will someone make a motion for the appointments to our boards and commissions?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the appointments to our boards and commissions for Scott Dean for Historic District Commission with the term ending 11/1/27 and Russ Gardner Planning Commission with a term ending 11/1/27.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All right, it's a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes?
Clark,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes.
Motion carries, and thanks to Scott and Russ for serving on those. Takes us to discussion items. 6A is notice of intent from Douglas to sell wastewater treatment plant capacity to Saugatuck Township. Thanks for all the information. Ryan, you want to tee it up for us and
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And some of my explanations may be a little brief with my throat today, but the city of the Village of Douglas intends to sell 55,000 gallons of sewer treatment capacity to Saugatuck Township for a price of about $250,000. This amounts to about 5.5% of the sewer treatment plant's capacity. So pretty good chunk of the capacity and frankly at a good price, at least for the township. Interestingly, back in 2008, there was some litigation between the city and Douglas where there was an attempted sale by the city to sell sewer capacity to Lake Town. Douglas had concerns with that and the agreement language at the time, and so there was a lawsuit and eventually a settlement that resulted in a right of first refusal being added in for either Douglas or the city to be given the first option to purchase sewer capacity if it were to be sold by the other to another entity. And really, that's an important tool that's now in the agreement that really helps protect our long-term capacity needs and financial interests of the community that really built and funded the system. We were the original starter of the system and funders of the system back in the late 70s when we joined forces to build the existing plant. As part of the ongoing water sewer agreement updates and the recent lease of capacity to the township, we've already done some evaluation of our actual long-term sewer capacity needs. In fact, we looked at that quite a bit, given the fact that we were leasing some of our capacity to the township. Essentially what our engineer, is he on yet, Jamie? I know he was going to attend or plan to attend. Okay, maybe he got hung up. Okay.
That's him. It usually says John Moxie, so I'm not sure.
Yep. All right. So he's with us.
There it is.
All right. Well, he's with us today and he can certainly kind of expand on this, but essentially kind of taking a look at where we're at today and what our peak month flows look like essentially during the summer. That's when we use the most and kind of projecting out several years and using what's likely to happen to our community over the next several years. We're not looking to need more sewer capacity for many years, right? We're in a good spot, which is good. We're talking, 25 plus years, and even more conservative estimates could put it out even further than that. We all of that to say, we will note that the price that's really being considered here is pretty good in the sense that, Mr. Moxie and I believe that the value of the capacity is actually much more than the Douglas is selling it to the township for. They're essentially using kind of an accounting valuation versus maybe an actual valuation. And just for some context, Mr. Moxie kind of provided how much it's actually costing to build standalone plants today, right? Which is very, very expensive. Now, in our case, we already have a plant, so it wouldn't cost that much to build that much, given we already have an existing plant. But it still would be very, very, very costly should we need additional sewer capacity in the future. In fact, it's exactly the position that the township's in now, right? If they're not able to obtain sewer capacity, they would have to potentially build it at a very, very high cost. All that to say, we don't need additional capacity in the reasonably near future. And so this is kind of like, left me with, we could certainly purchase the capacity. We could choose to exercise that right. That right is built into our agreement. We would have to buy it at that $252,000 cost. We would probably need to use general fund dollars to do that. And that would, give us the additional capacity. Now, that doesn't mean that we still couldn't be helpful in some way to the township. We could choose to still lease that capacity to them, given they have a need. We could use a 425 agreement to assist certain projects in getting the necessary sewer capacity and come up with some, cost sharing and tax revenues and other revenues to kind of account for some of that, if that's something that the council is interested in. Another thing that I've kind of considered is that, as we've negotiated the updated water and sewer agreement, the township has been less than willing to keep that right of first refusal language in our agreement, which is a little interesting to me because they're okay with some language that would give them a right of first refusal, all of us actually, as it relates to Lake Town in the future, but they don't want us to continue to have this right of first refusal as it relates to just Douglas and us. And so I think that's still a really important tool that we have, and that's important to keep in our agreement. And so, if that right of first refusal goes away, this could be a last opportunity to buy at a really good price. And if we were to allow this sale to go through, I think that it's reasonable to ask them to consider or make a commitment to really keep that right of first refusal in the agreement. So Mr. Moxie kind of does have some specific numbers. He can get into any more details. I don't know, John, if you have anything else that you might want to add.
Yeah, maybe just at a high level, Douglas had their engineers go through a process to evaluate vacant property in the city and potential density of development, things like that is how they determined that they had this capacity available, didn't need it for long term. Douglas has substantially more capacity allocated than we do today, and pretty close to the same peak flows. So they had more of a kind of a margin between what they're using and what they had available than we do, which is why we opted to lease the 14,000 gallons that we did earlier this year instead of selling it. Saugatuck's flows are hard to project, mainly because the population has been, if we go by census data, which is one of the tools that we use often, the population has been decreasing in terms of the census numbers since 1990. And we chalk that up to things that are affecting everybody, like smaller families, but also kind of the shift from single family homes to vacation rental properties, things like that. So we're still seeing similar flows in the summertime as what we have. We only have good data going back to 2021, unfortunately, which is when Cal Lake started having us break the flows down by community kind of in a more detailed way. And at the same time, our flows have been decreasing from 2021 onward. I attribute that to the lowering lake levels. I think that's pretty clear. There's some other factors like low flow toilets and things like that. But when our flows are decreasing, it's hard to then turn around and project, okay, what are they going to increase at if they ever start increasing again? So we looked at it a few different ways. Bottom line, there just isn't a ton of opportunity for development in the city. We see quite a few redevelopment projects, both on residential things and some more commercial multifamily things. We see a few new homes getting built. It's usually 1s and 2s, not 5s and 10s. So there just isn't a lot of, I think, probability for the, base flow to increase. So that's kind of how we came up with our conclusion that we don't think this is capacity that is going to be, serving the city in the, in the reasonably near term. Another point on capacity is it's much more valuable when you need it than when you don't. If it's sitting on the shelf, it has less value, and I think that's what's driving Douglas to sell it. But if you need it, like the numbers show, if we had to expand the plant by 55,000 gallons per day, it would be a pretty expensive undertaking. So that was kind of my perspective in the comments that are in the memo. Happy to dive deeper on any of that or anything else.
Questions?
John, how much of our capacity are we using right now? I understand Douglas is using about half of their capacity. How much of our capacity are we currently using?
Yeah, good question. So the way the capacity allocation works in the current agreement, which is all kind of in limbo now, but the way the current agreement stands, we look at 3 month, kind of the maximum 3 months, which probably not a surprise to you. It is generally June to August. Our maximum 3 month has been decreasing from 235,000 gallons per day down to about 200,000 gallons per day. Our current allocation, if we took back the 14,000 that we have currently leased to the township, is 364,000 gallons per day. And the threshold, the target of 75% that's in the current agreement is 272,000 gallons a day, I believe. So we're in the ballpark of that first trigger, but not near enough that it's concerning yet.
So that's leaving us with over 60,000 after the numbers you gave us.
Correct. Before
is
it would
quite a
even get to
bit.
that 75%. And actually there's discussions, I think, Ryan, you know better than I do, but I think there's discussions of raising that to 80%. So that would give us even more room for some potential growth.
Right. And as I understand, there's really not a whole lot of room for more or bigger development here in Saugatuck, right?
Yeah. Like I say, most of what we've seen on the development side, reviewing plans and things, has been either renovating existing buildings, which has very little impact on sewer flow, or taking out the building that was there and building something bigger that usually adds restrooms and things like that. But again, these are often vacation rentals, things like that only pop up when they do.
Right. And I'm also understanding, I don't know if you can answer, maybe you could, Joe, that would mean that if they were to purchase that 55,000 from Douglas, that when it comes to future repairs to the plant, which probably will be due, I mean, here in the next 5 to 10 years, updates and things like that, the burden would be lessened, right, for the Saugatuck and Douglas taxpayers, because it would be going out to possibly, what I'm understanding the number, 225 to 250 more people would be helping to pay that bill. So that, right, so that the burden wouldn't be as heavy if there was to be any major maintenance repairs or things like that. I've toured the facility several times over the years, and I can tell it is getting older there.
Yeah, I think, as Ryan said, it's kind of a little bit up in the air because a lot of it's going to depend on the new agreement and how that's put in place, right? I mean, if you're allocating costs relative to capacity, then that's true. If you're allocating it, according to actual usage, that's different.
I'm just always looking for where the benefit would be for our taxpayers.
For sure, yeah.
Just to add on to Joe, I think the current agreement is based on allocated capacity. So basically those costs would be transferred from Douglas to the township. I don't know that this impacts us in that scenario, but if we're moving forward and assessing costs to the users based on usage and things like that, then having more customers in the system does benefit us.
And being an engineer, do you foresee that if we were to have an extra 55,000, that would be something that in 25 years, 30 years from now, that you would see that kind of growth in this city?
Yeah, I would be very surprised, just knowing as much as I do about the city and kind of seeing what few years we do have. Yeah, I'd be very surprised. I just don't see that kind of development, unless you were to annex, areas outside the city, which probably isn't all that likely right now either.
Chris?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a question, when we are redoing Maple Street, how much capacity was expanded there?
Very little. We are only doing repairs on sanitary sewer. We are potentially going to be adding several stubs for some future connections for people that are on septic. So figure 4, maybe 5 houses tops. There's also a township property that just reached out and said they might want to connect to Maple Street. That's still very early, but less than 10 homes total would be Maple Street.
Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, just a quick question, John. If you were to do an independent valuation of the capacity that's being sold, any idea what you believe fair market value would be?
I didn't get that far into it. No, I'd have to have the people that are smarter than me in my office do that, my wastewater treatment folks, and I could follow up with that for sure.
Yeah, and on the other, I know this one's going to even be harder to answer, but it seems to me, kind of just listening to you, the biggest variables in the amount of growth of capacity that the city might have would be as if the ratio of vacation rentals to full-time residents shifted somehow, right? If there's not much room to grow, right, that's really the dynamic that's going to change whether or not the city actually needs future capacity, correct? Am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, I think that's a fair set because it's based on kind of our worst 3 months, which kind of lines up with a tourist season. So the seasonality does impact us, even though, our flows in December might be going down. If our flows in the summer are going up, that's really what matters.
Right, okay.
I think it
Any
would take
idea what that-
another high water event to get us back to, where we were in 2021. And the other thing we can do if we do start getting, close to those is we can do some projects to try and reduce that clean water inflow too.
So that's an interesting point in that while we don't have capacity for new building, we have capacity for more people to live here because more people have lived here.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Trying to understand what that threshold would be, because
Right.
We could theoretically get back to the 1990 census numbers if, more people
Die.
move here.
Yeah.
Well, or if, the capacity issue is it's both what's available within our housing stock. It's
Yeah.
underutilized.
Right, and would that be available if those, but those, I can't see how that would take up, that much, because we're talking about the impacts you're talking about are on the hill and, 2 neighborhoods. When you think about water use and all that, the businesses and all that sewer use, I'm sure they're doing a lot more of that, but the 2 neighborhoods like on the hill and where you are, I don't know if those, even if they all became all full-time residents and not vacationers, it's hard for me to believe that we would need that much more capacity than we have.
well, no, that is the question, though,
Yeah, right.
That's kind of where I was trying to go, is there's got to be a threshold somewhere, right, where, if the full-time residency gets up to a certain level, right, where we're going to start pushing on our capacity. And if that is the case, right, even if it's a remote possibility, we may want to consider,
Right.
the fact that we're potentially buying capacity at a lower cost.
Yeah, I understood that.
Yeah.
Is that a
Thank
issue,
you,
Ken?
Madam
Yeah, okay.
So pretty much what we're looking at here, the question is, do we want to keep the first right of refusal?
Right.
And then the second is, can we lease versus sell? Right? So the idea of capacity, I'm really worried that it's only going to go till for 30 years.
This what?
That we're going to lose capacity. We might be at our full capacity in 30 years.
Uh-huh.
That goes fast. And when you try to rebuild, the plant was built in the 1970s. Right?
Late 70s, yeah.
And that he gave us a shot at how much it would cost to redo it. And it was a crazy amount.
Yes,
So,
millions.
yeah, and I don't think, the usage that we're gonna find is going to increase, like your question is, we're gonna lose a lot, we're gonna add a lot of revenue that wasn't there before. I don't see that happening, certainly not here, not about Douglas, but the township. So, without the question of what you asked, do we know how much this costs per gallon? It's hard to
Right.
make a decision. Leasing versus renting.
Well, another wild card to throw out there is this whole revised water sewer agreement, right? We don't yet know what it's going to look like. And I mean, it's possible capacity is not even a component of the system of the agreement anymore, right? In which case, we'd basically be stranded, we'd have a stranded investment if we were to make the decision to, keep that capacity. So there's a lot of wild cards, out there.
A lot.
I'm channeling my inner Chris, about water, your view of land. It's like, don't give up land.
Well, and people fight for water. Bourbon's
And
for
people
drinking
fight
and
for everyone's
water's for
choice,
kids.
and so I'm sort of, why would we give up a first right of refusal? I mean, it doesn't mean we've demonstrated to the township that we've helped them meet their needs by essentially signing a free lease, to them. So I don't know why we would give up the first right of refusal.
That's the thing that troubles me the most, particularly if there's a new agreement in the works from what Ryan said, Douglas doesn't seem to like the fact that Saugatuck has the right of first refusal, would prefer that it's not part of future agreements. That troubles me. Because I think that's key for us to, have optionality. So that worries me a bit. I would certainly like to help, because rising tide lifts all boats, and it would be great, for the township to have the opportunity to develop more, but not at our expense over the long term. That worries me.
Well, there's
They come
another-
Back again and ask us and we could say yes. Go
Well,
ahead.
there's also another question, which I don't know that we know the answer to, which is if we were to exercise our right of first refusal, would the township cough up another, bucket would Douglas cough up another allocation for the township where we would both buy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And just to clarify, it's both Douglas and the city that has a right of first refusal right now.
Right.
But yeah, in our discussions and updating the agreement, I've raised this at least during 2 or 3 meetings and it's, I think Douglas hasn't necessarily stated a strong thought, but the township hasn't necessarily been willing to add that language or keep that language in the agreement.
Why do we give it up?
Ross, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with what seems to be the general consensus. I do not believe it's in our interest to give up the right of first refusal. That has been in existence since the inception of the Cal Lake back in the late 70s, and I think it's important for our community. Despite the unknowns, we want to have protection from unanticipated high water, build outs, et cetera. I mean, John, residential build outs or usage is not going to have a huge impact on our gallons per day. The seasonality that you mentioned during the summertime, even if we were to increase our principal residents by full-time residents by 50, for instance, which would put us at one of our highest populations in the past 40 years, that would not have an appreciable increase in our gallons per day anyway, right? Where the real, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would totally disconnect it. It goes against what we normally do in engineering, but I would totally disconnect, census population from flow in this case because they just don't have a good correlation.
Yeah, I think where the biggest impact, and it's not going to be something I think the city of Saugatuck has to worry about, is manufacturing or some type of facility or business that would chew up a lot of water and sewer. Back when Rich Products, Lloyd J. Harris was here, that was the biggest effluent into the system, and it was created a lot of issues for water filtration and sewage, et cetera. Of course, that's long gone. We had American Twisting Works downtown here too. So we did have manufacturers that actually did put strain on the system, and those have been long gone. I don't see anything like that coming back. Even the small brewery, Noble Twist, which presumably would have some additional incremental impact on this, I don't know that it's had a huge impact at all. So the future state to me doesn't look like we're going to have much of a huge increase in terms of usage in gallons per day, both for water and sewer. But that right of first refusal, I can't predict the future. I think is important to maintain. The other question that I have is around the pricing. We don't have the ability to, or we don't have any right to tell them what they should be charging the township for their capacity. Is that correct? It's an excellent value, I think. It was in one of the letters that I saw. Would we be able to have any, because that's an asset that's being sold that we've invested in over the course of, 40 plus years. Do we have any impact over that pricing? Do we have any right to say anything about the pricing?
No, I think the agreement right now just says that if whatever the price is that
Yep.
they're willing to offer it at, we get that same price, yeah.
So then thinking down the road, growth is probably not going to be something the city of Saginaw proper is going to have to be concerned about from a capacity standpoint, but the entire system is going to have a capacity issue at a future point. It's something we've been talking about in our utility committee as well. We don't know when that's going to happen, but at some point, there's going to be a need for an increased capacity at that plant. And we don't know how far out that's going to be. The city of Sagatuck will be in a position at that time to probably still be around the same level we are today, but we may be in a position or be put into a position of having to pony up some money through user fees or some other investment in order to get that entire capacity raised, when it's really going to benefit the village and the township. And that's nothing against the township or the village. It's just they've got the space and the capability of expanding. It could include manufacturing, could include more residential. That's my concern, is that the city and our residents and taxpayers, I don't want to be in a position of having us needing to pay for capacity that's not going to necessarily benefit us as an individual, homeowner. It benefits the entire system, right? Because it's going to make the entire system bigger and better, presumably. But that's my concern, is that I don't want to put us in a position of having to be responsible for, and again, we've been talking about this through the agreement discussions too, is I want to be sure that we don't have that obligation. So the pricing question is, if they're selling an asset at a lower than market price, we can't influence that. Can we somehow or another put into this agreement or come back and say, we want to be subject, if we ever had the need to ask for additional capacity, that we could get at a pricing similar to this with inflation and some other markers on it. And I don't know if we can or not, but that would be,
I'm sorry, just a question. So when you're saying put that as part of it, you're talking about in the new agreement that's being crafted?
no,
or-
within this, approving this, because we have another 30 days to approve this, right? You say yes or no.
Right.
Is there any influence we can have in this to say yes, or we can say yes or no? But if we say yes, can we put in some to say
Raise
that?
the price.
Right.
Basically, is what they're saying. You want to raise the price. Do we have the ability to do that?
Yep. Or do we have some opportunity to make sure that we don't pay more for additional capacity at a future point than what's being paid today? Again, no disrespect against the township or the village.
Right.
Just,
So, yeah, a couple of things. I mean, really, our decision is ultimately yes or no. If your stance is that, hey, we think we're probably willing or potentially willing to say, no, we're not going to exercise this purchase, but we want you to make a commitment to keep that first right of refusal language in the new agreement. I would probably ask that each of their boards pass some sort of resolution or something to give us a firm commitment that's going to occur. And then that would be included potentially in an updated water sewer agreement. If there's a desire to ask that, there be a commitment that, a future purchase be at similar pricing with an inflation, we could certainly ask, but it would be outside of really
Okay.
this. Yeah. As far as like an increase in price, I mean, really the entity that would benefit would be, Douglas. I mean, they're gonna end up,
right.
And obviously they've reviewed and feel comfortable with the price. And, I mean, it was Andy, Campbell that had kind of come up with basically an accounting perspective on what the value was worth. And then I think their engineers, which they share,
Yeah, I was right.
took a look and,
Letter.
yeah.
It sounds like the consensus is a no unless this can be future proofed. So our right of first refusal is preserved. The ability to have an advantaged price, should we need the capacity, is preserved. So I don't know how that gets structured in terms of an agreement. I don't know how you even start on that. I mean,
Well, we'd be betting a lot on our ability to influence the outcome of the new water sewer agreement.
Right.
And I think that that's
right.
not something that we should really hedge our bets on. That's my opinion, right? I mean, it's,
Could you explain that? You don't think we have the negotiating ability to keep the right of refusal?
well, you have to understand there's 3 entities that are working on the water sewer agreement, right?
In the new agreement.
And the new agreement I'm
Okay.
talking about, which is where that would have to appear. Right.
Well, if one city decides not to do it, there's gonna have to be some kind of compromise. I don't know
You're
why
right.
why we would give that up first right of refusal, whether it's a new agreement, working off the old agreement. It just seems that's our strong negotiating point.
Mhm.
Yeah, my point is we won't know the outcome of the negotiations of the new agreement until it's done. And so we're still, potentially making an investment in something that may not even matter. And in fact, it's a low percentage likelihood, but there's a possibility it could boomerang on us and some costs could come at us because of the allocation we have.
I would
Right.
feel better having at least a draft or a promise of a contract, between them before we go forward with it. I mean, I would like to see exactly what that would look like.
What would look like?
Their
New agreement.
contract.
And we won't have it until.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it would be nice to have a snapshot of,
And this is where my thinking is that their boards would make a commitment, at least via resolution, that they're, are committing
Continue
to
to maintain the right
that
of
language
refusal.
being in the updated agreement. Now, resolution,
Yeah.
different board could come in. It's not necessarily,
Binding
totally
is-
enforced. It's not binding, but at least it would be a very public commitment. And obviously you all would, if it's not in the final agreement and you're not happy that it's not there, then you would say no to the updated agreement and it would be at a standstill until everybody's in agreement with the language that's in there.
it just, I like the collaboration, the idea of collaborating together. I appreciate their collaborating with our road work that we've been doing, the township. I wish I could find a way to make this good for everyone. The first thing came to mind, but they don't want that, is that, why can't they lease more? But, of course, they're looking at their future growth and they want to make the purchase. So
Yep.
that's understandable.
But this doesn't really hamstring them. I mean, they're getting, unless I'm reading this wrong, they get what they need from Douglas at a really good price. We maintain a right of first refusal. Doesn't mean we're gonna exercise it. We didn't exercise it this time.
So they
So-
can still do it.
Or that there'll be an offer in the future. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe nobody has
So-
anything to offer.
So nothing really changes. The township's getting what they need, and then we've got this bear that we're gonna have to negotiate, which will kind of make the rest of this moot once we get a new
Right.
agreement.
Mhm.
So I don't see what the downside of holding to our right of first refusal, and to anybody, to us, to them, I mean, that was what was weird about the leasing them what they needed versus selling. It's like you're getting what you need and we're just preserving a right we probably won't need, but we might. And so to, Chris's, let's not give
Don't
up.
bind future cities, councils.
Right, yeah, I mean, I think they would be saying lots of bad things about us if we did that. So I just don't see how anybody loses, but how anyone is disadvantaged if we just keep that in place.
Very.
I'm sorry, when you say keep that in place.
Keep the
Right,
right of first
refuse.
refusal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not keep the
right.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So if we don't exercise it this time and we allow this to go through, we keep it in place, we still get the next time it comes up, if it ever comes up again, we still have that right. But if we approve this with Douglas going through with that, the other option is for us to buy it from them and lease it to them, but I haven't heard that any of us are wanting to buy it.
Sounds like that's where we're landing. And
Is allowing Douglas to sell it.
We keep $250,000 in our fund balance, and which we're probably gonna need.
Sure.
Right.
It's the other dynamic
Just
there, right?
giving the right of
Yeah.
first refusal in case something
Right,
comes
and
up
it's-
down.
because
If it comes up again, then we have
comes
another
up.
option.
Right.
Yeah, because what they want is for us to agree to this plus give up the right of first refusal, and it just seems
We're
like an
just not gonna do
unrealistic, that's like.
No, I don't think we should do
That
that.
seems pretty.
Why would we do that?
And if we were to agree, but, retain our right of first refusal, the agreement doesn't dilute or weaken our standing as, first in line next time around.
Or negate what they want. I mean, it's still gonna go forward with what they want.
So that it doesn't, am I correct in that?
Right, I mean, we
There's
could
no risk.
potentially get into a bidding war on, but, yeah,
Okay.
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 Yeah. Well, I'll go back to the township in Douglas and see if their boards would be willing to make those commitments via at least resolution and,
Wouldn't
And
it
then
just
we'll-
be under the old contract? Like the
The-
old
the-
contract says we have the right of
It
first
does, but
refusal.
it doesn't necessarily mean that will end up in the new contract.
Okay.
right? So
Well,
that-
yeah,
Right.
I like using this as an opportunity
Yeah, I agree. I think
this is
that's
an
really-
opportunity to leverage a commitment from them that, we're willing to go along with this, but,
wanna keep
we
it
have to,
right.
we have to future-proof our own city. So we need a commitment from you in writing or resolution, whatever it is, that, that right of first refusal for Stogatock is gonna stay, if I'm capturing that correctly. So we want that. And so might as well use this as an opportunity.
I agree.
So Ryan, is this in keeping with this recommendation that you put in the memo? Okay, I just want to be sure that this is what you were recommending. And I didn't misread that. Okay.
okay, see what we can get figured out and we'll return once we hear more or have some commitments and have you make a formal
Okay.
decision on.
And we need to do that by November,
Sixty
pardon me,
days.
December 22nd, right?
Yeah, 60 days, yeah.
And it was dated the 19th. There's a reason why we didn't see this earlier.
So when they submitted, I was gone.
Okay.
So I wanted to be here and there, in fact, before I left, I think you had one more, in fact, when they submitted this, I think there was, well, before this was submitted, you had one more meeting and I said, if you get it to the information to me by Monday, I said I can get it on the next meeting and discuss it. And Douglas with their move couldn't make that happen. So I did try to get this on.
Okay. Was not a
Sooner.
criticism, just more of a
Yep.
question.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us to 6B, the conservation easement concept for 582 Campbell, page 17 of our packet. Ryan?
Yeah, so Ryan Kennelly has submitted kind of a concept proposal. He's working on a purchase of 582 Campbell. And he has some interest in placing a conservation easement on a portion of the property that is probably not buildable anyway, given the dunes that are in that particular area. And so he's kind of asking some questions of the city and one, whether or not we would be willing to hold a potential conservation easement. Or whether we would prefer somebody else, such as a land conservancy or other organization to hold it. And then if there's any feedback that the council might have as far as things that we would like to see in a conservation easement in that particular area. And then if there's any sort of, approval process that this needs to go through with the city. And so in your memo, I kind of laid out some pros and cons of us holding the easement or having a land conservancy as the primary easement holder. And really, when you look at our history, we've had other folks hold our conservation easements, right? With the airport property, we had the Outdoor Discovery Network hold the conservation easement. We have the Land Conservancy of West Michigan that has Talmadge Woods. I mean, these, we rely on others to kind of hold that for us. And, given the, administrative and regular checkup burden that would be placed on the city really in perpetuity and really the responsibility to enforce a conservation easement, I think it would be best that somebody who does this work on a daily basis would be best to be the conservation easement holder. But Mr. Kennelly, I'm sorry, is on the Zoom call to kind of maybe present his further thoughts and seek your feedback. It's all right, Mayor.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, can you unmute and? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, the proposal, I'm not sure if anyone read it. It's just it's pretty clear. There's a property size between 7 and 8.5 acres that is part of it's buildable, part of it is unbuildable. Behind there, I know it connects to some older walking paths, like to the beach and to Park Street. So it would be, preserving those that are already there in existence and just looking for some guidance on if there's interest, and if so, how to structure it so that the city can hold on to it. It's not going to be, uh, uh, you know, bid on by contractors or, in the future. I just want it protected as big as possible and as long as possible. So I'm flexible with with the dynamics, and if I've got all these people kind of on standby if I had some guidance on who who would be the easement holder or conservation holder, and the next steps as far as paperwork, if and when that is something that's mutually agreed upon and beneficial.
Questions?
I guess the first question, I was looking at the map that was in the packet, and then I was trying to compare it to Google Maps, and Mr. Kenley may have answered my question. Does some of the proposed conservation easement currently cover that kind of final section of the Woolham Trail where it's gravel? No, it does
Or
not.
does not.
Okay. I'm trying to understand, exactly where it is and where it terminates. I couldn't really make it out from the
So-
map.
If you're going up Campbell Road heading west,
Yes.
you go just past the Suites of Saugatuck,
Yeah,
that frontage between that and Mark Beckon's house,
yeah,
that's the frontage that's on Campbell Road in this,
Right.
in the rendering. Behind it's the Manchester.
yeah.
And then it also touches a little bit on Wyrick, but it's that space, it's the old Bob Covernick property. So that's essentially the space that he's talking about.
Yeah, I determined that it was sort of past, if you will, the Suites of Saugatuck. I just was trying to understand how close it got to the Woolham Trail.
It doesn't.
because It doesn't. No.
Now, probably the closest trail is the Shorewood access as well as Dune Ridge, which is private.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's the closest public connection. But those aren't even public, so it's not contiguous to any of the West Shore trails,
Okay.
which are semi-public.
Yeah, the Shorewood ones are public, right?
Depends who you talk to.
Yeah, right.
Come in and ask you what you're doing.
Yeah, they're not public. Yeah. They're regularly used by the public, but
I was gonna say.
they're essentially not public trails.
So right now it's sort of a island around private property, for lack of a better, okay. I guess I'm curious though, how much closer this gets us to, trying to solve some of the problems we have on Park Street with creating more walking paths, to the Woolham Trail, to the beach, to get people off Park Street if they wanted to. And I'm just trying to understand if that gets us one, puzzle piece closer to solving that problem. Not that that's the only thing I'm considering, but that would be a big positive.
Russ?
Yeah, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kennelly, for being here today. I really appreciate your efforts to, as a private property owner, to try to make property conserved for other uses. I certainly applaud that. I'm considering option 2 as being the best option for the city. There's a property that's let me explain why. This is not city-owned property. It would continue to be private property, but it would have a conservation easement if that's the approach that Mr. Kennelly would like to take. But just north of town, near the old Pine Trail Camp, there's a land conservancy there that's privately owned. It's been there for a lot of years. And that has always been used for people to pass between between Upper Riverside and Lower Riverside. It's now been blocked off because the property owner's been trying to keep people out. Anyway, the reason I mention this is because that's a private land conservancy, which I think is the concept that Mr. Kennelly is bringing, is how could I preserve this property and maybe even make it somehow or another available for public use? That would be entirely his call if he goes with this approach. But that approach on the north side has worked pretty well for a long time. As a matter of fact, when the property was sold, the owner bought the conservancy with the property. So That's gotten a lot of public use over the years for people to walk through. And again, it's been blocked off recently for a few different reasons. But I think that from my perspective, from a strategic standpoint for the city, represents the best option for Mr. Kennedy for the property. I don't see how this would be easy for us to connect to any public trails. There's a lot of private property that surrounds this that you'd have to find easements and other access to even make this connection to, say, Woolham or a connection to Park Street. It's essentially, it's an island of land. But I support the conservation concept.
There are several paths back there, but obviously,
Yeah.
I'm finding out now they're not public, but they are walked upon. I mean, I've
Oh,
been
yeah.
walking on those for a long time, so it does connect, but it's not going to be the right way to do it. But it's a starting point for sure.
Yeah, I applaud your thoughts, Mr. Kennedy. So thank you for bringing this to us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
A question on the map. So for the, where the houses will go, is that an old map or?
That's
So
an old
the-
PUD.
That's the original. Yeah, I
Okay.
had some trouble finding a better updated map on. I tried. I will try to find a better one if that's going to be helpful. But yeah, that's the original builder's proposal.
Okay.
Those houses will not go there. In fact, that might be some additional land that I'd be open to, including in the easement. But I think for the proposal, it's that 7 or 8 acres that are directly in the woods that I think 5 of them would be like unbuildable and 2 of them would be, and the city could, do anything they wanted to with those acres, if there was a future need for it or, or use.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for being here in the presentation. I don't support the city being involved in this. I would see this, if you want to do a conservatory with a conservation easement with another group, that's fine. Why do you feel you need to make it a conservation easement? If you're going to buy the property, can't you determine what will go there anyway?
True. I mean, to be honest, I don't have the resources long term to pay all the taxes and all that stuff. This is like already a stretch, and my family's been going up here since I've, been 1 year old. And, if anything, I would like to keep some land, possibly expand, but, keeping that area a nature area, connected to Shorewood is important because, there's a lot of development going on. And so this would be just a way to, eliminate some of that, the property taxes and, just
So
keep
that
it
pretty much
unbuildable.
stays private for the people that live around it, pretty much. So, and there would be no then public walkway into that property. You would not, if the city would be involved, which again, I don't support, you would have to make that public, I would think, in my mind.
For the walking paths, they have to be public. So that was a suggestion. So, but if they don't connect, then I don't see how, we could let somebody just start in the middle. There's no public access to get there.
Not done yet, Russ.
No, sir.
And secondly, if we would do that, it would seem to me that the conservation easement should be with you and the other group that's going to work with that. I don't see the city stepping in there. And then even if the city did, I would suggest that the easement run with the land so that if the next person wants to buy it, they can take it out of the easement. But I don't see us picking up the cost to maintain something that the public can't even get into. So I agree with the recommendation to work with another conservation group to do that.
No one else?
Yeah, my comment was just going to be, go back to that description of that property on the north side on Riverside, is that has been used as public walkways for a long time, remember as a kid walking through there. And the new property owner has made a concerted effort to keep the public out. So in this case, the private rights of the owners will always be the predominant decision. Conservation easement just sets a expectation that it can't be developed. But whether it's public or private use, that's entirely up to the property owner. So Mr. Kennedy or future owners would make the decision on whether the public even has access to it or not. Even though I know public has been walking through this, Mr. Kennedy, that's just kind of the nature of things. But as a property owner, you have the right to say you cannot access anyone. Even if it's in a conservation easement, you can restrict access to it.
Anyone else have questions?
I guess I'm still just mulling over if there's a potential opportunity here, even though it's currently an island, to connect it to other, and I understand that it's private property surrounding it, but I know one group in particular that comes to mind that's been quite active in pursuing easements from private property owners to do walking paths and to formalize them. So I'm still open-minded to the various possibilities around this, particularly I think I'd like to hear from some other folks that are involved in creating conservation easements and trying to join up, walking paths. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I think the question before, I mean, it sounds like he wants to do a conservation easement, which is, I mean, sort of regardless of,
Yeah.
which I think is awesome. I agree. I mean, I don't think the city's really in a position to maintain that. But I wholly support, working with ODC or somebody else. And also, if you are interested, I think there are people who would be, who are looking to connect all of the trails, and that might be an opportunity, you would want to pursue down the road, kind of separate from us, or, I don't think that has any bearing on what our decision would be related to a conservation easement.
Yeah, and I can certainly connect Mr. Kennelly with, the Radar Hill Hiking Club group and, pass along the contact info for the Outdoor Discovery Center Network or the Land Conservancy, the folks that we work with at those two organizations.
I think Riverwoods Council might have some
Riverwood.
interest in.
That's who I was thinking of, is the Riverwood Council.
Is that?
Okay.
John
yeah.
Vanderbeek's organization, because
Well, he's the
John's been
master.
very diligent about approaching private landowners, and he's had conversations that I think many of us aren't even privy to. And so he may actually, if he was to look at this, he may have some thoughts on people whose minds might be changeable or might be open to, once again, creating a connection. Because, I think, it would be absolutely great, and it would help the folks on Park Street, I think, so much to have ways to walk that would get them off of Park Street, because that's a huge problem that the city's facing. So, yeah, I think Riverwood, among the others that were mentioned, would be great. And I would love to see it to go in conservation. I totally hear the rest of the council's concerns about the city taking on responsibility for something that we can't even get to easily. But I love the idea of this maybe being a keystone of connecting some trails together. So I would encourage those conversations to happen.
Chris?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In looking at, going off of that, Scott, looking at the map, where is Park Street?
Way over here.
Way over here.
Yeah, when I was looking at it, I was intrigued by, there's an area of the Woolham Trail where currently someone has decided it's private. There were different colored markers, and there's one part that's not Woolham Trail, but it did have markers at one point that's been closed off. So I think if suddenly someone was to learn that, 7 acres are going to be allowed to have a path, other folks might be compelled to join, and it can be quite exciting what could happen. It'd be so important for the folks, I think, that live that side of the river to have ways to walk not on the road, because that's a long-term project, Park Street, but we got to get it done, but it's gonna take some time. It's gonna be complicated.
Great. Any other questions? Any final comments you'd like to make, Ryan? Mr. Keneally?
No, I'm open to the conservatorship. I did do some research on that. They actually suggested I come to the city council first, let the city decide if they wanted it, and then come back to them. So sounds like
Right.
that's the next steps for me, which I just appreciate the time to hear me out.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I want to say thanks, Ryan, for coming, because a lot of times we get hit with things like this and we never get to see them. But I appreciate your participation in the meeting.
Yeah, happy to join. Happy to present. Thanks again for the time.
Great. Thanks. So that takes us to council direction on strategic planning meeting for fiscal 2026-2027, page 22 of our packet. Brian Cummins.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we're already at the point where we're planning for our lengthy day of getting together and kind of talking about, how we did, last calendar year, and hearing from staff and reviewing our progress on our current fiscal year priorities. And in the past, as you know, we've used a facilitator to do that. Her name is Marilyn. I always struggle with pronouncing her last name, but Simonek. Yeah. So for the last 5 years, we've used Marilyn to assist us with that process. So I wanted to check in with the council to see if you wanted to do something similar to what we did last year, potentially at the yacht club, bring Marilyn back and hold another session. One key piece that and again, this is kind of our kickoff to our budgeting season, right? This is kind of the direction that we need as staff to then go and work on preparing a budget. And it all starts even before that, or it's really you providing us with direction with a community survey. But obviously, we just did a really extensive community survey with the master plan survey. I mean, it was a half hour long. I think it covered a lot of territory. And frankly, I'm still working through the feedback because I want to make sure and read every comment. So I think that, folks took the time we deserve, it deserves our time to make sure that we're aware of the feedback that they gave. So I may suggest that maybe we use that as kind of our piece of feedback to inform that session. Really, that survey kind of showed, hey, infrastructure is top of mind for folks, just like we found in our past community surveys. We have a parking survey that's going to be going out in December into January, and so I'm a little worried about some survey fatigue as well, and want folks to really focus on that. But I leave that to you and whether or not you feel like a separate survey to inform this process, or whether you want to have this session at all, or how you want to have it.
Great. So questions. Stay with Marilyn, sort of similar to last year, and then 2 survey questions. So,
Yes on Maryland, yes on the yacht club. I'm open-minded on the survey if it's a real burden for the staff. I mean, the master plan survey was quite comprehensive, but the more data, the better. So I'm kind of open to the rest of the council's views on that. But I think Marilyn knows the council. She knows Saugatuck pretty well. I think she'll make for an efficient meeting as she has in the past.
Lauren?
I definitely agree with Ryan that there could be some survey fatigue, and the fact that we did get such a large response on the master plan survey. I think it's really great information that we should use and not send out another survey. I'm fine with Marilyn being welcomed back as well.
Russ?
Yeah, I think we should move to a different facilitator for upcoming strategic plan. I have a different thought on how we should approach this. Like Marilyn, she's been with us for 5 years. I think we've grown beyond where we need to go with Marilyn. No disrespect against Marilyn. I think we should look at this differently. What I would suggest we do, I agree with other council members that the surveys and information for the master plan survey and the upcoming parking survey will provide us plenty of information to make decisions about what our strategic pillars are going to be. And that's where I think we need some help. We have what we call strategic goals in the strategy, which is I'd like to have a meeting, just doesn't have to be at the yacht club, could be a council workshop item to talk about distilling the information that came in that master plan survey and other surveys we've conducted. We can use AI to do this pretty quickly, is to identify 4 or 5 strategic pillars. The township recently went through this. I think Douglas went through this a couple of years ago. A lot of cities go through that, is to identify initially what you want those pillars to look like. And we've already got all the data, so it's just a matter of distilling it. And then that process will then take us into the strategic discussion where we actually say, okay, if we have 4 or 5 pillars, we agree as a city, this is the direction we want to go. Then we can begin to use the information from the surveys to actually populate what actions we want to take to support each one of those pillars. And the good thing is we've already got all the data. We don't have to go out and facilitate conversations with the community. We may want to maybe fine tune some things, but I would like to see us do this a bit more pragmatically. Again, no disrespect to Marilyn. She does know our community well. She knows the council well, but I think we need to do some more additional things. We should seek a different facilitator just to freshen things up, just to refresh our process.
Joe?
Absolutely yes to the meeting. I think it worked really well last year. You can't argue with success. So I would certainly support Marilyn coming back in and doing it again. Yeah, I think on the survey data, I think in a perfect world, it would be great to have a more tactical view of setting priorities versus the master plan data, which is more strategic. But whether you call it survey fatigue or whatever, I fear the sampling size would be smaller than we would like, and it might throw us off in the wrong direction by, listening to a narrower group of our the population out there. So I think I'm okay with using the, master plan data. So, yeah.
Gregory or Chris? Gregory?
Of course, I think this meeting is a great thing and I expect it every year. I do think we have enough data. I don't think that there's really that much need to put out another survey. I think we've surveyed everybody to death. We've got the parking survey coming out pretty soon. But I think we've got a lot of information and we've got a lot of great people here at this table that I see out in the city and in the area talking to our residents. I think all of us are pretty good here about kind of getting a good ear of what we hear with our community. So that helps. We're not as disconnected as I've seen in other bigger cities. We're hands-on. We're business people. We work in the community. And so we've got that as well going for us. So I think we've got enough information as far as all that goes. I do like the idea of switching it up, as far as our facilitator. And again, I have to agree, no disrespect, but I feel like, this will be my fourth one going to, third or fourth. And I feel that the last three have been very repetitive. I'm not saying that we don't get good things out of them, but when I think about it, I think that I feel like I could be challenged more, and maybe learn some new things. I feel like that it's the last three or four that I've gone. I think this will be the fourth one coming up. I feel like the process is repetitive. I would like to see a little bit more and maybe learn a little bit more from our facilitator.
Okay, Chris?
I tend to agree with Councilmember Muncy and Russ. I think we have enough information, no more surveys. I don't think we need that. I like the Saugatuck Yacht Club. I thought that was a fantastic place to have it. But I agree, if you look back on the priorities that we had, where we ran into trouble was we kept bypassing some of those priorities and sticking our staff with a whole bunch of other things along the way. So that they got stuff added on, but nothing really came off. I think we need to go to the next step, be more pragmatic about what we want and how we can obtain that. And if we're not going to do it, then let's take it off the list and make it a list that we can actually give to our city manager and our staff and say, this is what we want to do. Hold us in line so that we do this. So, and I think that's the next step higher person to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, nothing against Maryland.
So I'm looking at the priorities, I'm looking at our map. Man, we might not get everything finished, but I think going into this fiscal year, we knew that we're kind of ticking through. I hear what you're saying, Chris, and it was hard for us to get to a list, but I feel like we've been pretty good about being realistic that all of these aren't going to get done, much of it beyond our control. But being mindful and kind of sticking, I think we've had pretty good discipline about not taking on new stuff. Which is not to say I'm recommending we stay with Maryland, but what I like about the output of this is it's not all up in the air. It is, very practical. It's, this is what we're going to do, and you can kind of tick through the bullets and where are we? I do think the challenge will always be, are we biting off too much?
Yeah, Mayor, one thing is, I think clear is, I think as much as we would all like to get stuff done quickly, it just doesn't happen. Things take time. We identified parking as a priority. Parking committee just hit the ground running, a few weeks ago. So actually I think if what I'm hearing you saying is, what I'm hearing is, focusing on what we've got here and continuing to sort of just fine tune it, sense check it, gut check it, make sure things are still going the way they need to be. Because, I I think it's great. We do this every year. I value it, but I think we've got a pretty good path here. I think generally, I mean, we have our disagreements as a council, but I think generally you could probably find good consensus around the vast majority of what's here, so tearing it up and starting again, it doesn't make sense, but continuing to drive on this, I think, and to maybe kind of really dedicate the meeting to really looking at this might be helpful, but.
So Russ, tell me more. I'm curious about the strategic pillars and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, if you look at a lot, just go out and Google it. You'll see it. A lot of communities, as a matter of fact, the township has recently gone through it. It designs, and actually we've got the basis for it here, but we need to, I would like to have a workshop discussion around what our strategic pillars are going to be. And as examples of this would be, we already have public safety, infrastructure and built environment, economic and community development, environmental stewardship, good governance and financial stability, community and quality of life. Those are just some examples of other communities' pillars. And then below those pillars comes all the actions. And as I'm beginning to see this again, every time I see this, I kind of cringe because though we've gotten some things done on this, if I was a staff member that would receive this, I'd be like, oh my God, where do I start on this? And where do I find the resources to get this done? And what is exactly my priority? That's where I think the strategic pillars can help us, help the staff really prioritize these and say, okay, below each one of these, here's the list of things to get. And this is where a facilitator can come in handy because we can have these conversations and say, here's what we really view as being the priorities. And we can use the data that we've already received to inform that. And then put a realistic plan together to deliver to the city manager and the staff and say, okay, for this coming year, here's realistically based on what you have as capacity resources to be able to get things done. And here's what we want you focused on. And that will tie into the city manager's goals and objectives as well. That's the direction I'm going, is I think we've, to Councilmember Peterson's point, I think we've overwhelmed our city staff with, and when I see this list, I'm like, where do I start?
Well, they were all part of the meeting.
I-
So,
I've been at 4 or 5 of these now too, and I think it's just time for us to maybe take a step back, revisit the strategic, and I call them strategic pillars because that's the common terminology used for these.
Russ, I was in that business, so I know what you're talking about that way.
That we take a moment as a council and just maybe revisit those. There's typically maybe 4 or 5 of them, and just revisit those and say, are these the ones that we want to have? We've already got some stuff in place, and then that starts to inform the next meeting with the facilitator to actually go through everything that's in the survey. AI will be a great help in all this and, aggregating all this information, and then that can be a facilitated discussion with everybody like we've done before. But I want to have a pre-meeting, a workshop to discuss what we think is, what I think as a council member, the strategic pillars of the city should be.
Yeah, I guess my counter to that would be, we are on a path. I believe staff sort of knows this, which you even said, these look like pillars, what we've got here to a certain extent. And, based on the election, as the Helen Sentinel said, Saugatuck voters seem to go for the status quo, which would indicate to me that if they're paying attention to this seems to gel with what they want done. I would be hesitant to bring in a new facilitator, create a new framework, and give staff a whole new kind of set of marching orders, which I think which would be a potential outcome of kind of what you're advocating. So I think something that keeps us focused on this with the same facilitator who was part of putting this together, because I feel like the ship is left and it's on course. We haven't encountered any storms. Suddenly, this would kind of be like, let's just suddenly change direction, and it's like an oil tanker. When you want to change direction on an oil tanker, it takes a long time and it's slow and can be quite problematic, in terms of your efficiency. So I think I would respectfully disagree with I think where you're going with this to kind of tear this apart. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I respectfully disagree.
I am not suggesting tearing this apart. I'm suggesting on building and making this better than it is.
I don't think a new facilitator would really, make that much of a problem. And when I think about it, isn't that what we do every year? Isn't that the point of strategic planning, to give our staff new marching orders every year?
Well, as a matter of fact, a strategic plan, and just use my business as an example, is done every 3 years. So it's a 3-year plan as opposed to a yearly plan.
Mm-hmm.
Strategic is something that can be fairly static on a 3 to 5 year basis. It's the year-to-year priorities that we would expect the city manager and the staff to report in their progress towards the ones that they've decided are going to be the priorities for the coming year. So I would even say that we maybe have a budget meeting like we've had, but a strategic discussion would be maybe once every 3 years.
Well, this is where I agree with you, is I think starting to use this as a multi-year plan, it does have value.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm suggesting we don't rock the boat.
Yeah, I think that you summed up where I am. I mean, we can work on, I think, it's like, what are the buckets of work? And the buckets of work are the operations. I mean, I think we've identified the 3 buckets of work. I mean, we can, work on how we name that. And it is a lot, but it's sort of, it's very actionable. I mean, I think, and it could look better for sure, but sort of, it gets to sort of what we want to get done, and it's simple. Having charged clients thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars coming up with plans that might have, more categories or more, different language. Something like this, it's sort of like what's the yearly to-do list? And how does it fit in? It just feels more practical. And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work for staff. I think, we rely on our city manager, and he relies on his staff to make sure that we don't overwhelm them. I think we have shown some good discipline at looking at this to not add to it. So, I feel pretty comfortable with where we are, but.
Yeah, I do too. I think the success of any plan is how you can operationalize it, right? And I would almost throw it back at the staff and say, did the output of what we generated last year, was it actionable? And do you feel like it gave you clear direction on priorities and what needs to get done? I think we did a good job of saying, this is what we see and this is what we're hearing from the public. And now can they take what we gave them? Is there enough information for them to get the job done? And if there is, then, I think we're doing pretty well, probably better than most.
Chris?
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea, Joe, because I look at all of these things and pretty much all of them are being worked on.
Yeah.
Everyone. And so for me, my question is, if we do that, finish the new water sewer agreement, how much time does that take to do and everything? There should be 3 or 4 of these that just are number ones.
Mhm.
And those are the ones we do, and not let anything else seep in. That's kind of where I was going.
I agree.
Yeah, because every one of these is being touched on by staff right now, every single one of them. And if you took out the ones, evaluate and implement the wildlife committee recommendations, well, that's done, pretty much. So you can do that and then look at the ones that are left and say, okay, we've narrowed the field down. These are our biggies.
Mhm.
These are our pillars. This is what you have to do here. And we have to stay focused on that. I guess that's where I was trying to go.
Well,
I could support making an effort to try to order these a little bit better, for example, negotiate sale or lease of the old landfill. That's not a critical thing for me. That could go way down the list if that's what you're talking about, Councilmember Peterson, is
Yeah.
sort of prioritizing. I think, and yeah, things could come off.
Repair chain ferry landing in the arbor.
Yeah.
Already doing it.
Yeah. So
So,
I-
I mean, some of these we
There's so
know
many that
come
will,
along,
yes.
yeah, and some of them, will be
Expand holiday
multi-year
lighting.
that aren't indicated as
Expand
multi-year.
holiday lighting to water and I mean, if we
Yeah.
take out what's done, let's see what's left and how much time it's gonna take. And then just of that, what are our priorities that we want
Right.
when we come next year to strategic planning? Go, oh, those are gone.
And if the master plan shows an emerging issue,
Yes.
I'm all ears about trying to identify emerging issues and pour them
Mhm.
into this, if they fit. And then once again, Councilman Gardner's point, if suddenly a new kind of theme is emerging that is not being adequately addressed, I'm all ears to make adjustments to this framework. But I think this is a pretty good framework to start with. I wouldn't tear it apart.
Yeah.
So, I'm indifferent whether it's Marilyn or someone else, but I do feel like a facilitator could help our staff, Ryan in particular, to go through the strategic plan and look through it and see things that have emerged and things, where you could have a facilitator that says, hey, I'm looking at the strategic plan and these are the things these are themes that I'm seeing throughout this. Obviously, we're all going to read, the strategic, looking at at the survey, we're all looking at that survey, but that person, the facilitator, could go through and help us with some emerging things that could come out of it. And then we pluck off things that we've already taken care of. And maybe it's just a new facilitator to have a fresh take on things. But I feel like, Ryan, do you feel like somebody, a facilitator, could help you like bridge the gap with us as far as going forward to the next year?
Yeah, I think all of you, kind of did get stuck. It was at the end of the session last year and then carried over into a couple of workshops was, ranking these kind of priorities and what was the absolute must get done this next year versus what is maybe deferrable into the next year. And now I'm not saying that, I think Marilyn probably saw how we got stuck on that last year. She's just, she sees how big the list is and had some discussions about, is this really all really, is this, doable really in this next year? And so we do have a lot of these things started, like we're working hard, but I mean, staff's plates are full and overflowing. And so a lot of this is going to carry over into next year because they're big projects just to carry on. The good thing is a lot of these things that you're seeing here, I think are things that are emerging in the master plan survey results and what folks are looking to see. But yeah, ranking things going forward, and Maryland very well may be able to really focus in on that or plan for that better, or come up with some ways to help that happen if you're not looking to make a lot of tweaks next year and either adding priorities or
It doesn't
You know,
feel like they're wrong to add priorities.
Priority and time, right? Those are the two elements that are would really be helpful, right? And
Russ?
so to Russ's point, right? Okay, this can be high on the priority, but it's not high enough. So it kicks to the year two and it's got a 3-year completion cycle. We even talked about that, I think you might remember, right? A little bit of a Gantt view of the whole thing. And I think maybe that's what it's missing, but.
One pillar that's not on here is economic and community development. We've heard a lot of I've heard a lot of conversations when I was out canvassing for election is that the business community does not feel like it's being paid attention to. Now whether you agree or not, that's a perception. At least that's the experience of some of our business owners. And I think that's an area, and Ryan, you and I have had conversations about, that was something you wanted to try to do, is get a better relationship with the city businesses. I think that's something that we should put as a pillar on here, is economic and community development, because our community, in my opinion, is at risk from many of the advancements of other communities on the shore are very active in terms of getting the communities, whether it's the Downtown Development Authority or another model. We're being left behind. And I think that should be a pillar for us to put in our plan. Now, there's going to be things that have to be done underneath that, but that's something I think absolutely needs to be on here. And I see some other heads nodding. I really feel like we're being left behind.
Yeah. And I think the CVB does a great job advertising and talking about the businesses we have, but I think what we need something a little bit more substantial and a better relationship between the city and the businesses.
Not a criticism.
And I've been asked again, how many times I'm asked, why don't we have a DDA, or why don't we have that component here? And we've gone back and forth with that over the years. Well, we don't have room downstairs for another department or whatever, But I think that is something that we really need to explore as well.
It just as a refresher, remember last year you kind of did work because we used to have kind of a bucket, pillar, goal, whatever you want to call it. In 2024 economic development was on the list. Remember, you all got split up. Everybody tried to kind of, how do we narrow these down or combine these things that we had in earlier documents, this document, survey documents, and into one. And that's kind of where we came up with the operations, public health, and I think safety was added actually. And then infrastructure is its own, and parks and rec. So fair, we can have that discussion if it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these 3 sets of priorities, they do benefit the business, and they're essential for the business community. So I mean, some would probably have to fall into a new bucket. If we need 4 buckets as opposed to 3, I'm not opposed to that, but there's overlap on a lot of them. I mean, having good telecoms is critical to business people. We saw what happened when the natural gas went out. We saw what happened when the electricity went out. So, The infrastructure one is critical for the business community, for their success. You know, we've had a presentation. I'm looking forward to feedback from the business community on the Rose Garden, you know, what they think about that, you know, the thing that CVB's brought forward. So I don't know, I mean, do you create a fourth bucket that's gonna actually take some of these other things that actually benefit everybody? You know, and are all currently important for the business community? I mean, how do you do that?
Lauren, I can tell you.
Well, I
this.
mean, I believe we should have a DDA and, you know, it was turned down years ago and it would be really fantastic if we could get that going. I don't know where the city, you know, what the city can do to have the downtown businesses start a DDA or a version of that. Is there anything that the city or our city staff can do to help facilitate that?
Yeah, well, the city would be a key piece of it. I mean, like talking about a DDA gets into tax increment financing and funding a DDA over time and creating a separate board and structure. And there's other tools that are available as well, you know, that we can look at as well. A lot of them are more assessment based though versus, you know, using tax increment to fund the work of the actual district. And how would folks feel about any assessment dollars and those sorts of things? But there's a lot of different tools in the toolbox that we certainly could explore and dive into if you want to further.
I think we just need to be mindful of, you know, residents' taxes. You know, when they go to things that benefit everybody, that's great, you know, and I think everybody can get on board with that. But then when you start to make, you know, a particular business's priorities, you know, that may not gel with the taxpayer, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. And we all know how important the businesses are. We all agree with that, but you need to be really careful on how we as a municipality are dedicating tax dollars, you know, so that's why I think this DDA conversation is so important.
I'm just looking at, you know, these columns as well, and I'm seeing places where the DDA could actually help alleviate some of the projects that the city works on, you know, for example, the signage and wayfinding. Over in Douglas, it was the DDA that, you know, headed that program and things like that. So I'm thinking a DDA would be helpful in both ways for our business owners and as well as taking on some of these priorities.
And I would love to, this is a great conversation. I'd love to have a workshop item here before we do our strategic planning session to talk through this. I think there's some really good things being discussed here. But I am sensitive, especially when you talk about economic and business development with a DDA, that's another thing to be added to the plate of the city staff. And this is where a facilitator can come in handy, because once we actually decide that these are our strategic pillars and using all the data we've been given, then we work with the facilitator to help prioritize what we want the city manager and the staff to be focused on and whether we need additional resources or whatever the case may be. That's where I think we need to do a better job on making sure that we give them the right tools needed to be able to get this done. It's not overwhelming them with dozens of projects that they all kind of get started on, but you know, we'd much rather have a better focus on these individual items because we know this is what's coming in the coming year. We have some compliance things that we need to work on, like, you know, lead pipe replacement and other things are definitely going to be a priority. But then once we get additional time and capacity, then what is it we want them to work on next? You know, setting up a DDA has been done hundreds of times, but it's a commitment and it's an investment of our city time, lawyers, the business community and so forth. There may be some other things we can do to get that moving sooner, but I'm very sensitive to adding another item to the list without having some help figuring out exactly what the priorities are going to be to meet these pillars.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the whole point of that session. And it sounds like, you know, one thing we would for sure want to discuss there is, you know, what do we want to do with, you know, where do businesses fit in? And then, I mean, I don't know that I think it's on us to do the prioritization. I mean, yeah, you have a facilitator. Marilyn kept at us last time and we ended up, this is what we ended up with. So that's on us, not on the facilitator if the list ended up being too long. So other than, I mean, this has been a great discussion. It sounds like if we were to go into a session tomorrow, we would add discussion around a DDA or some sort of way to, you know, economic and business development. Is there another bucket or category or pillar, call it what you will, that we're feeling like we're missing that we would want to add to that?
Yes, yes, I think there's an opportunity for the city to become more effective for its, I'm not sure exactly what to call it, but many communities, many of our sister communities have, we talked about our website update. We've talked about making the city more visitor friendly for getting services without having to engage the staff if they don't need to, getting services online and so forth. Saugatuck 311, something I've discussed several times, of getting a way to automate the tasks that people want to report issues with. And I think we can get better at that. And that's a strategic initiative, I think, from a good government standpoint. We're pretty transparent. All of our meetings are out there and so forth, but our website needs some help. And I think Jamie, thank you. She's done a great job making all the documents easily identified and available. But I think we need to take another step up.
But we have that as
Yeah.
a priority.
But I think we need to expand that as well to include some other items like the things that I just mentioned. So I would just say that's something we need to probably make a separate pillar of some kind. If we talk about a separate pillar, that's something I would want to discuss. So
I can see that falling right into the economic development part,
Perhaps,
you know.
perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful. We don't have too many pillars.
I know,
And
no,
then
I'm not.
Within the pillars, then to your point, let's reprioritize, or make sure the priorities are clear. So, well, in terms of what is everybody sense? I know Russ would like more time to workshop this. Do others feel like we need more time to workshop this?
Well, I think the key part for me is I agree with the benefits that a DDA could bring. That seems like that's a pretty meaty subject. I'm all about helping, the business community and developing our downtown. That makes great sense. And I guess I'd be curious into like actually what the load on staff would be if some entity like this was created. Is that all on staff, or is that a whole new structure, that the business community are more kind of leading on? I don't know the answer. That's not an area of expertise for me, but conceptually it seems reasonable, like a reasonable thing to do, but I think that would take its own workshop. Because I'd like to have like a Lisa here, for example.
Yeah, and I would caution us from getting too far down the path on the DDA, because there's other models available under state law to be able to facilitate some of the things we want to do. And the
We
city
have
of
a
Holland.
whole group of people in town that have a
Yep.
whole
Yep.
stack of paperwork that they went through years ago to try to get
Yep.
a version of a DDA here.
Right.
Right.
That is DDA, Sadaba, Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there are a variety of.
Principal shopping,
machines.
principal shopping districts, another model. And as a matter of fact, I was given an introduction to the person who does all of this in Holland, who is open to talking with us, whoever from the city, to say, what are different things that they've done? And some different, because they've got full-time professional people that do this stuff, and they're willing to talk with us about how maybe we might be able to accomplish some things we want to do in the city without having to, anyway, there's different thoughts on
Okay.
this.
Well, just
Well,
real quick, just on this, Councilman Muns, can I just ask you, because I think you're more steeped in this than most of us. I mean, from my perspective, I think businesses, obviously they're staying here. There's businesses that are coming here. So I think generally they're doing pretty well, but is there a desire of them to get together and collaborate and to take it to the next level? Or are they by and large happy with where things are? I think you're probably as plugged into the business community as any. Yeah, I mean, would they?
Well, I think I have to agree with Lauren. I think there is a desire to have a DDA, to have a group again that focuses on our businesses, on economic development. Yes.
Way to pay for things
And
that
to pay for things.
right now, hat is passed for
Right.
all of us to donate to a lot of things in town.
Right.
And if there was some sort of an organization that everybody contributed
Uh-huh.
to, that's part of it. The streetscape downtown, we would love to see a refresh on that. The signage
Right.
downtown, we really need that. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
that-
When we had Sadaba, and unfortunately, at that time, there was administrative fallout, and I wasn't a part of the organization at
Right.
that time. Before that, right before that, they had at least 200 or around 200 members, and that was voluntarily. So that tells you that there's at least close to 200 people that would be willing to pay.
Mhm.
They paid $300 a month or whatever, or I mean $300 a year for their membership.
Yep.
So
I find this persuasive is we have a someone that operates two businesses, one here in Saugatuck and somebody that operated a business and was, operating with Sadaba. So we've got two council members that are fairly well steeped in this,
So how about as an,
And the city, back in the day, and when I'm looking 10, 15, I'm sorry, Holly, back in the day, 10 to 15 years ago, or even longer, the city and Sadaba worked together on projects that saved time for our staff on things that they do, like surveys and other projects. Being the wayfinder for people at that time. We used to have temporary signage that we would put out during events and things like that. Working with our officials for safety. That was something that, we took on for those parades, and so I think I see the benefit of having this for both our city staff, our business owners as well.
okay,
Madam
So-
Mayor, Holly.
Thank you.
I think we're all in agreement, need to do a workshop.
So let me propose something. So how about we let our city manager kind of digest this? He's, I think, heard what, and then come back to us with a recommendation on sort of next steps to get ready for the workshop, whether it's another workshop or a point of view of that, but give him some time and come back in a workshop, but it might not be. Let's digest this, but clearly we need to get aligned before we have a strategy session. I'm hearing no to another survey that we've got the data we need. And then where I don't know, I've heard I've heard at least one strong no Maryland, maybe two strong no Marylands, others. Where are we? Do we want to find somebody or do we want to stick
I
with
think a
Maryland?
facilitator is beneficial. I'm open to either Maryland or another facilitator.
I'd like to see a new facilitator. Like I said, I feel like it's been repetitive. It's a lot of team building. The different programs that she introduced, I thought were very repetitive. I'd like to see something fresh, a little bit more fresh. And the outcome, like you said, it does depend on us.
Right.
It's not the facilitator that's telling us what to do. I'd like to play some different games, you know what I mean? Yeah, so to speak, And, on a humorous note, one thing we did never accomplish that I saw made the list was that gondola.
Oh, that's right.
And I saw it on the list here.
I guess, I can go either way. I guess my key concern though is that we maintain consistency. I am not an advocate of tearing this up and starting from
Oh, no.
scratch.
No.
So, no, I'm not,
agree.
I'm not in favor of having a facilitator comes, it's like, no,
Let's
no,
start from
no,
first.
let's
It
start.
seems
No.
like we've got our buckets and we're adding a business economic
So the-
development.
Right.
So this to me would be very incremental,
Okay.
in terms of any changes, because staff seem to be hitting on all cylinders on this, so I
Well-
wouldn't want to have any kind of major course correction.
Right, well, this is something we could say to our facilitator, hey, we're happy with this, we're happy where this is going, this is where we're at, by then, we would maybe already have a meeting or a workshop about economic development bucket or column. So I don't see where, this would be all torn up and
Yeah.
starting from scratch.
I guess, I think, Maryland hits the ground running, she's very turnkey, but, I'm not, it's the majority rules, so
Okay.
whatever the majority thinks,
All right,
but I think she's fine.
good
I
discussion.
didn't say she was bad, I thought she was good, but I just want something different.
Fresh set of eyes.
Okay, good discussion. That takes us to our second public. Ryan, do you need anything else before we kind of revisit this later?
Nope, we'll digest and.
Cool. All right, second public comment. Anyone in the room wish to comment? Anyone online wish to comment? Okay, then we need a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to move into a closed session pursuant to Michigan compiled laws 15.268E and H to discuss a confidential written legal opinion regarding the ongoing lawsuits filed against the city by Dune Ridge, captioned Dune Ridge versus City of Saugatuck, case number 22-65713-CK, and Dune Ridge versus City of Saugatuck, case number 21-64709-Z, regarding trial or settlement strategy, which if discussed in an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect.
Second.
It's a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner.
Yes.
Muncy.
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sammy.
Yes.
Right, we are out of closed session. We're at council comments. Lauren, you want to start?
Nothing at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Gregory?
Just a happy Thanksgiving coming up to everybody, but there's not really much to say because nobody's on, so I'm just wasting my time. I was gonna plug the Christmas Carol. Tickets are on sale. You can go to saugatuckchristmascarol.ludus.com. Please buy tickets and help support Christian neighbors.
All right, Scott?
Just a big thank you to Jamie, our clerk, Scott Herbert, the rest of DPW, for stepping up and helping us put on the Veterans Day ceremony last week. Very much appreciated. Also, thank you to Back to the Fuchsia for a wonderful wreath.
Weren't they gorgeous?
Really nicely
I
done.
was like,
Well, you made it, didn't you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, thank you. It was very nice. I think it was a good event. Thank you to Corey.
Brad.
Thank you to Corey Stoppel and the Boyce Brothers and just really everybody that made it a really special event, even on a very kind of cold and windy day.
It was.
Oh, and the mayor as well for addressing the crowd. Thank you.
You know,
Okay, Joe?
I'll defer till Monday.
Okay, Russ?
No comment.
Chris?
I do. I'm going to whine just a little bit. Congratulations to Scott and Russ for being put on a committee. And Lauren's on PPW, Gregor's on urban and the parking. Scott, you got ECR. You, Joe, you have the Cal Lake. You just got Planning Commission. I have the hardware. We meet 3 times a year, and the last one we didn't have a quorum to go. So should an opening come up on the fire board,
Yes.
I would like to be considered for that.
You had your chance, sister, but if it comes back.
I did have my chance and I did not take it because the tradition is that the person who goes off, if they want to continue that, they get to continue it. And so I didn't do that to Jane. Jane now though has sold her business, I think
Ah.
so. So.
All right.
Chances are always.
Great.
Nothing except I will add Scott's name to the people being thanked for Veterans Day. It wouldn't have happened without you and Jamie especially. So thank you. It was a beautiful ceremony as well as Douglas's. So with that, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Good meeting you guys.